You're here in this fantastic show on this beautiful morning, and we want to enjoy something that we haven't done for quite some time, a joint press conference here at the Met. Most of you are of course familiar with Surrealism, and we all know some of the European names of Surrealism, be that André Breton and Magritte and Max Ernst, Duchamp or Dali. But of course, Surrealism is a more complex story. Surrealism is a global ism. It actually is the one ism that really went global. And it's a universal and complex artistic language that had indeed, and that's what you see also in this show, a lasting effect on creative imagination over decades. This exhibition in that context challenges narratives about Surrealism, especially a narrative of it being a canonical, monolithic movement, and rather presents it as something much more universal, inclusive, broad-ranging, enduring, transforming. It is indeed actually a network of artists, of movements. It's also a style, an artistic language that was necessary to articulate opinions, thoughts, expressions during what was probably also the most challenging decades of the 20th century, just after the First World War, in between the wars, during the Second World War, and right after that. So whether in Buenos Aires, in Cairo, in Tokyo, in Belgrade, or anywhere else, you find representations of Surrealism, and you find that here in this show. This exhibition pushes boundaries of history, geography, and nationality, and shows this dynamic group of networks that Surrealism has established. So without doubt, this is an exhibition that really also demonstrates the promise of exploring the art of today in an institution that has a global and historical reach like the Met does. So we are pleased to present this show here in New York, and I want to thank and acknowledge Stephanie D'Alessandro, who is standing here, the Leonard A. Lauder Curator of Modern Art and Senior Research Coordinator in the Department of Modern Contemporary Art at the Met, who curated this show and conceived it and the publication together with Matthew Gale, Senior Curator at Large at Tate Modern. That's where the show will travel after its presentation here in New York. I also want to thank Lauren Rosadi, the Assistant Curator in Leonard Lauder Research Center in the Leonard Lauder Research Center for Modern Art, and Sean O'Hanlon, Research Associate in the Department of Modern Contemporary Art. So all of that department also is very grateful for Sheena Wagstaff for her leadership of the Modern and Contemporary Department, the Leonard Lauder Chair of Modern and Contemporary Art here. So Sheena is here as well. And of course our deepest gratitude go to all the donors who made this show. It's a complex endeavor with many loans coming from many different countries possible. So I want to thank the Barry A. and Dee Dee Wigmore Foundation, the Placido Orango Fund, the Gail and Parker Gilbert Fund, Alice Carey Brown and W.L. Lyons Brown, the John Pritzker Family Fund, Jake and Elaine Marie Schaffran, and the International Council of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We are also grateful to the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation and the Doris Duke Fund for Publications, who helped bring the truly ambitious catalog to life, and we have been able to really produce a fantastic publication. As well, my thanks go to the Federal Council on the Arts and the Humanities for providing indemnity support for this exhibition. I also thank the Donner Galleries and Philips for sponsoring the exhibition opening tonight. I want to especially, of course, also thank all the many artists and their estates and the private and institutional lenders who made this exhibition possible. It is a long list of lenders, but also a long list of collaborators who kind of helped us with advice, with documents, with information. In many of these cases, this show is probably the first time that we really brought a lot of the material to light. I want to thank in that context really also the entire Met team for making this exhibition possible. It's been a challenge, it's been certainly a challenge, of course, also during the pandemic, logistically, from a research standpoint, all the different aspects. So it shows really also not only the resilience of the Met, but really also the power of this institution to be able to mount an exhibition of that and bring all the loans here and have it in this beautiful installation. I also want to mention that we will present an outdoor film series I mean, in typical surrealist fashion, this show is not just a show, it kind of expands and radiates outside. So we have an outdoor film program that will start this Friday evening on the 8th of October on the south facade of the Met, just basically visible for anyone who is in the park and wants to enjoy surrealistic films. And we will present especially films from Central and Eastern Europe and the Pacific there. So you have that in your material on all the dates that we'll do that, and it will just be sometimes a passerby who will enjoy a fantastic film that they have not seen before. So thank you so much for coming. I'll now turn it over to Sheena. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Max. And again, just to echo what Max said, it is absolutely fantastically wonderful to be here again in the galleries for a press view of an exhibition at the Met. It's been a while since we've done this, and it's great to get back into it. So good morning, everyone. As Max said, I'm Sheena Wagstaff. I'm the Leonard A. Lauder Chairman of Modern and Contemporary Art here. And I join Max in extending a warm welcome to you all on the launch of our epic exhibition, Surrealism Beyond Borders. And firstly, I should like to salute my brilliant colleague, Stephanie D'Alessandro, the Leonard A. Lauder Curator of Modern Art, who with her co-curator, Matthew Gale from Tate Modern, has given us this gift of an exhibition, founded on a radical idea and bolstered by an extraordinary wealth of new research and impeccable scholarship. I do advise you to pick up a copy of the catalogue. It is the most amazing tome, and it contains huge nuggets of new information that is really extraordinary, and it defines, I think, what the Met certainly does in all areas, not just modern and contemporary. So huge congratulations to Stephanie for this most pioneering of shows. And also I would like to call out Sean O'Hanlon and Lauren Rosati for their intellectual contributions to the show and for their sheer hard work organised in a global pandemic, no less. And I'd also like to reiterate our deep gratitude to Barry and Dee Dee Wigmore for making this exhibition possible and for their great beneficence to the Met over very many decades. These kinds of patrons are incredibly important to us, and they have stayed with us through thick and thin, and it is wonderful that they have supported this show. And in addition to them, there's also John Pritzker, who is a relatively new trustee. He is a devotee and a collector of surrealist art, and he's also generously supported the show. Surrealism was above all an idea. It was not an orthodox view of the world, and neither is this exhibition. André Breton, the Archduke of Surrealist theory, described it as, quote, a living movement, a movement undergoing a constant process of becoming. At the time of his statement in 1930s France, a steadily creeping social nationalism was eroding and defiling democracy in Europe. Beyond the notion of surrealism being coincident with a particularly dark political chapter in Europe, however, it was also an idea that became vividly relevant to artists across the world. It connected crucibles of artistic activity from Seoul, Tokyo, Moscow, and Belgrade to Cairo, Mexico City, and Havana, and many other regions affected by the legacies of colonialism, exile, displacement, and the traumatic changes in cultural identity. Surrealism was fundamentally anti-nationalist and anti-imperialist. It offered a means of revolt against the status quo, questioning authority and political power. Above all, international artists associated the surrealist impulse with intellectual, creative, and political freedom. Central to the vision for modern and contemporary art at the Met, as exemplified by our programme of exhibitions at the Met Breuer, is to critically examine and to cast new scholarly light on the way that avant-garde movements rapidly became old orthodoxies of modern art history. This innovative exhibition offers us a fresh, rich account of the idea of surrealism. In the process, it reveals an exhilarating array of international artists who worked against the grain, crucial contributors to the process of becoming as epitomized by surrealism. And of course, we're surrounded by examples of all of that. So thank you again very much for joining us this morning, and you will now be hearing from my very good colleague, Stephanie D'Alessandro, to whom I extend a resounding bravo.
Good morning. Thanks, Sheena and Max. I'm pleased to speak today about Surrealism Beyond Borders. Before I do, I'd like to recognize my colleague, Matthew Gale, Senior Curator at Large at Tate Modern, who's been working on this project with me since 2014. I'm very sorry that circumstances wouldn't allow him to be with us today. I'd also like to thank Max Hollein and Sheena Wagstaff, Quincy Houghton, Andrea Bayer, and many others for their unwavering support of this project. And I'd like to gratefully acknowledge members of the curatorial team. You've heard again, but they deserve to be heard yet again. Sean O'Hanlon and Laura Rosati in the Department of Modern and Contemporary Art, as well as Karine Harmond, Assistant Curator of International Art at Tate Modern, for the many contributions to this large-scale undertaking, as well as many of the artists, collectors, art historians, archivists, and specialists around the globe and in our own city who have contributed time, insight, and curiosity to the catalog and the exhibition. I'd also like to thank my Met colleagues, curators Claire Davies and Shani Javiri in Modern and Contemporary Art, and Maya Nuku, Evelyn A.J. Hall, and John A. Frieda, Associate Curator for Oceanic Art, for their special contributions to this project. It's impossibly difficult when you work at the Met not to want to single out every brilliant colleague who has brought their passion, rich experience, and amazing skills to a project, but I will say that this exhibition and publication could not be what they are without them. I want to thank many curatorial colleagues, as well as colleagues in conservation, exhibitions, registration, design, publications, digital, and so many other departments. I'm so grateful for the many rich conversations we've had over Teams and Zoom to conceive this project, despite the challenges we all faced during the pandemic, and the celebration of realizing it together in the past weeks as we've come together in the museum. Sheena and Max have helped to introduce the exhibition, and what I hope I can do in my remaining moments is to share some of the big ideas that motivated Matthew and me as we worked on this exhibition. This is an exhibition about an idea with the potential for revolution from convention and for freedom and transcendence from the many personal, artistic, social, sexual, political challenges of the 20th and 21st centuries. It's an idea called surrealism. It's also an exhibition that pushes us to ask how this idea became so ingrained in our minds, so codified in our eyes, so institutionalized in our taste that we might have missed the fuller story of that idea. From the start, surrealism has proclaimed itself as international. And so when Matthew and I started our research, we undertook a review of past exhibitions and publications on the subject of international surrealism, going all the way back to the 1920s and including projects organized by some of the spokesmen, and I mean that intentionally, of the earliest groups. We sorted through this long history, and we started to ask ourselves sometimes uncomfortable questions about modernism, art history, and ourselves. Why, for instance, is there a lack of narrative about surrealism in such places as Korea or Puerto Rico? Is it due to a lack of interest among artists there, or is it due to a lack of attention on scholarship until this time? There were, in fact, examples of artistic adherence to surrealism in these and many other countries. Our Euro-American orientation, history with its geopolitical alignments and restrictions, have contributed to issues of invisibility and lack of access. This is certainly also the case for surrealism in the city of Aleppo, for example. Political exigencies and international relations have complicated the retrieval of histories and representation even in this exhibition, as has the pandemic and related and ensuing political and economic challenges that have been amplified by the inequities around the world. Surrealism Beyond Borders cannot be an encyclopedic endeavor, but we do hope it will open our eyes to more that remains for discovery and some of the real issues that have blurred our focus until now. Our understanding of surrealism has indeed been shaped by iconic images and great magnetic leaders. And while that history isn't incorrect, its focus has certainly occluded the very vibrant and fuller life of surrealism, its adaptation and adoption, its waves of translation and transmission, and its networks across countries, borders, and time. To instigate a different orientation, we've conceived this project as a dynamic, transnational, transhistoric system of intersecting paths of surrealism that acknowledge not only the shared and special interests of artists associated with the idea, but also the conditions under which they lived and worked. As you walk through these galleries, you'll find a number of what we call points of convergence, or locations, like the Bureau of Surrealist Research in Paris, just behind you, where André Breton and his colleagues recorded their dreams, or the Caribbean islands of Haiti, Martinique, and Cuba that relayed surrealism, and where Imek and Suzanne Césaire, Wilfredo Lam, and Hervé Telemaque, for example, brought the potential of surrealism to affirm Black identity and the fight against colonial rule. You'll find figures, examples of surrealists, and there are many more that we could have chosen, for whom surrealism was essential as they faced challenges of political restriction. This includes the allegorical artistic escape of Cecilia Porras and Enrique Grau in Colombia, as well as the challenges of travel, exile, and displacement, perhaps most poignantly represented by Ted Jones, who formed his own diasporic community on the pages of his magnificent project, Long Distance, that you'll find at the very end of the exhibition. You'll also find presentations of familiar themes of surrealism, the work of dreams or beyond reason, as we're standing in now, automatism and the uncanny, reconceived in transnational, transhistoric, and collective but very specific terms. Each of these routes navigates a notion of surrealism, but it is in their overlapping and interconnected directions that we believe we can find a fresh and fuller view. This is not an exhibition that functions like a period at the end of the sentence. Rather, it is open-ended, an instigation for our present moment. There's still more to uncover, more to unpack, and still more happening by artists today who continue to find hope in surrealism's revolutionary call. With its appeal and ability to connect people across distances, offer a tool against complacency and routine, and liberate us from both artistic and real political impediments of our time, it's no wonder that the writer Suzanne Césaire has called surrealism the tightrope of our hope. I hope you'll agree the same after you tour the exhibition. Thank you for joining us today, and I'd be very happy to answer any questions you have as we walk through the galleries.
So no one really even knows if we're smiling.
Right. You said in your remark that this exhibition is a typo of our time. So can you talk, let's start by talking about that. Can you elaborate?
Well, I think that there are many surrealists today, and surrealism is not really a historical movement. It's just one that has existed for a very long time. And I find from the research that we've done that surrealism has been something that artists have often gravitated to when they need to find a way to challenge a convention, to push beyond the everyday. And certainly for myself and for my colleagues, having been through the pandemic and all of the tumultuous changes and things that have happened even in the past few years, surrealism has felt very urgent to me, myself. And I have found in my research, reading about other artists at different times, that same kind of attention. So I think that it's an important idea still to think of today, that surrealism offers that kind of hope for us, tenuous.
Okay, and you guys as the director of the museum, you've been doing a lot right now. So can you talk about what do you hope that when people come to this exhibition, what do you hope they will take from this exhibition and other things that this weekend you just held an event to celebrate your 150 years, so talk about that.
I think we have a very special moment here in the city and for the Met. We wanted to make sure that we can share with our audiences the best program and the most ambitious program possible. So in that context, I think both the Met Fest, but also especially this exhibition is another milestone in our institutional history, but also in another milestone in the moment of New York and the Met coming back in full force. It is clearly also an exhibition that is full of revelations, full of new perspectives, full of surprises, joyful surprises, pleasant surprises, but also kind of challenges to our notion, not only what surrealism is, but also how we can look at the world. So in that context, I think it's a perfect fit for our time, and it gives, I think, a perfect kind of tool for all of us coming out of these surreal times that we've just experienced.